Good afternoon. Let us pray. God of many names, today we gather to celebrate the 176th birthday of Rockford's first institution of higher learning. We have been blessed and challenged during this journey in ways that could not have been imagined by our founding ancestors. And so it is, this day, we celebrate with gratitude the gift of vision, to see beyond the day at hand and into a future where we are called to mend a broken world, feed a hungry child, and comfort those who must struggle for mere existence. This day we celebrate with gratitude the gift of creativity that allows us to see barriers as opportunities to educate the minds and the hearts of those who fear that change diminishes personal power and the needs of the few supersede the needs of the many. This day, we celebrate with gratitude the gift of fortitude that has empowered us to serve as champions for those whose whispering voices are not heard and whose needs often go unmet. And this day we are filled with gratitude for our leaders, trustees, administrators, faculty, and staff who work relentlessly to grow an institution that is committed to building a future based on hope, knowledge, and skills that together can transform this world. We too are grateful for our students who bring out the best in all of us, challenging us to join them in lifelong learners as we view the world through their eyes. Divine Creator, keep us mindful of this maxim of life, that the only certainty is that change occurs. Bless our efforts as we embrace these changes. Empower our future leaders to carry forth our legacy of working for justice, speaking for the unheard, and living anything but an ordinary life. Bless our work and theirs, so at the end of our journey, the world will be a bit richer in kindness, compassion, civility, and hope, because we were here. We thank you this day and all the days for the history that is ours and the future that is to come. Amen. Now please welcome Rockford University's vocal collective.
That's it. I'm gonna ride the chariots in the morning, Lord. Ride the chariots in the morning, Lord. I'm getting ready for the judgment day, my Lord, my Lord. Ride the chariots in the morning, Lord. Ride the chariots in the morning, Lord. I'm getting ready for the judgment day, my Lord, my Lord.
Are you ready, my brother?
Oh yeah.
Are you ready for the journey?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to see Jesus?
Oh yes, I'm waiting for the chariot 'cause I'm ready to go. Ride the chariots in the morning, Lord. Ride the chariots in the morning, Lord. I'm getting ready for the judgment day, my Lord, my Lord.
Are you ready, my sister?
Oh yeah.
Are you ready for the journey?
Oh yeah.
Do you want to see Jesus?
Oh yes, I'm waiting for the chariot 'cause I'm ready to go. Riding the chariot to see my Lord.
Thank you once again, Vocal Collective. Your performance was adequate. All right. Welcome, students, RU employees, trustees, and community members. It's my honor and privilege to address you all on Rockford University's 176th birthday, 1 year removed from the big shindig last year. When I think of birthdays, I think of looking back, revisiting milestones and memories, and of course growing old. And so like many of us, I'm often tempted toward nostalgia, which is defined as a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. But that's only a dictionary definition. So let me start with the word sentimental, which is defined as excessively prone to feelings of tenderness, sadness, or nostalgia. Well, let's try wistful. Having or showing a feeling of vague or regretful longing. Okay, one more try. Let's define longing. A yearning desire. Okay, let's define yearning. A feeling of intense longing for something. Okay, let's define desire. A strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. Now, how about something? Used in various expressions indicating that a description or amount being stated is not exact. You can see how this all ends, or rather never ends. We define words with words. Sometimes it is easy, sometimes not. I could go on and on. I kind of love this sort of stuff. But I want to address nostalgia. The cynic in me wants to say that nostalgia is when we look on the past with, and here I commit the sin of using a cliche, rose-colored glasses, that we skip over the difficulties and shortcomings. But I do not have much of the cynic in me, and I never have. So I guess this is my roundabout way of stating that on this Charter Day, where we celebrate 176 years since the birth of this institution, it is right and understandable to look back with some nostalgia at where we have been, to allow ourselves to be prone to tenderness and sadness for what is no longer here, and to long for parts of the past that are no longer present. But at the same time, the tendency toward nostalgia also stems from the yearning and desire for a continuation of the great tradition that we're built upon. Grounded in the liberal arts, supported by a dynamic faculty and staff, Rockford University continues to be a beacon of higher education for Northern Illinois. And it is a well-being of this beacon, which is defined as a fire or light set up in a high or prominent position as a warning, signal, or celebration that we are called upon to protect, to feed, and to guard, in order to signal to all that we are here, and we are well, and we are ready to serve. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to welcome the podium Rockford University Board of Trustees Chair, Rebecca Epperson.
Good afternoon, everyone. We finished up the rain, so hopefully some sunshine will come out, but at least we don't have ice on the ground, so we'll be thankful for that. It is my great honor to be here with you today, and thank you for attending. I'm joined today by a few of my Board of Trustee colleagues, so thank you for being here. On behalf of all of us, let me express my appreciation for you and your commitment to Rockford University, and to wish Rockford University a happy 176. That is quite the accomplishment, especially for a college or university, especially these days. And I'm truly proud to say that you're at a university that is growing and continuing to evolve with new degrees and new opportunities, with a collaborative and entrepreneurial spirit. The benefit of a school like Rockford University, which is based in liberal arts, is not that we are looking to graduate students for a job tomorrow, no. We're preparing our graduates to consider and prepare themselves for careers that have not even been created yet. In a world of increasing complexity, interconnectivity, and change, it is critical that all of us here, whether you're a student, a member of the faculty, staff, alumni, or friend of Rockford University, we all have the opportunity, and more importantly, we have the right to be a catalyst for what's next. After all, leadership is not a title. Neither is its shortened version, leader. And no matter where you are in your life, you are and can be a leader every single day. You can be an influencer and or guide others. You have a voice that is uniquely yours. Use it. You have experiences that are exclusive to you. Share them. You have opportunities put in front of you every day. Take them. And you have leadership chances that may be disguised as something else. But if you look hard enough, you will see them. Is it assisting a fellow student with something? Is it having an honest conversation with someone? Or could it be attending a convocation to gain more insight? When these leadership chances come about, jump on them. You have the opportunity to build bridges, communicate through meaningful dialogue, be adaptable problem solvers, and consider how to make another person's life, or better yet, a whole community, better by just being your own version of a leader. What impact can you make on your generation and the next generation? There is nothing greater in this world than the impact you make for and on others. Consider that as you leave today. Thank you again. I'm honored to celebrate Charter Day Convocation with you. And now it is my great pleasure to welcome to the podium our honored guest speaker for today, Rockford University Interim President, Dr. Patricia Lina.
Good afternoon. So I was thinking how fortunate I am to be here, even if only as an interim, to celebrate with all of you the founding of this institution. I have asked myself a couple of times since I've been here why it is I feel so connected to this institution, and that connection was there almost immediately after I started. As I prepared these remarks for today's convocation, it became very clear to me what that connection is all about. First of all, I love higher education. I love its purpose, I love its history, I love its structure, and yes, for those of you who have heard me rail against shared governance, I actually love that century-old system. Shared governance is a unique feature of American higher education. It's one of the many reasons why the U.S. enjoys the reputation of having the best system of higher education in the world. And for most of the last century, shared governance has worked well. But, excuse me, there is a bug right here, and it's, there we go. That would have really upset me had that been a thing. To continue, like a lot of people who love higher education, who study it, who want to protect it, I believe that issues facing higher education today are exacerbated by a century-old system in desperate need of reform. And without that reform, I think the future could be a little rough. What we do significantly contributes to the effective functioning of the larger society. Because of higher education's ability to transform lives, that makes it perhaps the most important social system in our society today. It is imperative that our system of higher education remains viable and robust. To quote our most illustrious alumna, Jane Addams, "We stand united in a belief in beauty, genius, and courage, and that these expressed through truest womanhood can yet transform the world." Transform the world. I even heard Professor Elaine refer to transforming the world. From the day Rockford Seminary was chartered on February 25th, 1847, it has recognized its responsibility to the larger society. And that is something that really, really resonates with me.
In addition to loving the social system of higher education, I have also spent almost my entire life, at least since I was 13 or 14, committed to women's rights and women's issues. And up until like the last second in the history of this social system I love, women were effectively barred from higher education. I'm not sure a lot of people, specifically younger people, realize how muted the voices of women have been, not just in government, not just in business, not just in politics, but in higher education. We cannot talk about our legacy of progress here at Rockford University without understanding how long women were excluded from accessing higher education. And that exclusion includes those institutions of higher education that have been and continue to be considered the gold standard. The institutions we aspire to resemble. You know, the Harvards, the Yales, the Penns, the Dartmouths, Columbia, the Ivy Leagues. They are regarded as the best of the best. And one of the reasons we believe they are the best is because they are highly selective. They are distinguished and admired for the number of people they keep out. That's not Rockford University. Harvard spent the first 300 years of its existence making sure it only admitted white men and only white men from prominent families. No women, no people of color. I was a freshman in high school before Princeton and Yale began admitting women. That was in 1969, and I know that sounds like a bazillion years ago, but it was not that long ago. Brown didn't admit women until 71, Dartmouth held out until 1972, and Cornell didn't go co-ed until 1982. That's just not that long ago. In fact, I was thinking about, that's when Michael Jackson's Thriller album came out, so do not tell me that was a long time ago. So at Dartmouth, the northern New England bastion of liberal thinking, in the 1970s, the male undergraduates at Dartmouth unfurled banners from their dorm windows that read, "No co-eds," and "Better dead than co-ed." When Dartmouth's Board of Trustees was considering a co-ed proposal, an alumnus expressed a fairly popular sentiment. For God's sake, for Dartmouth's sake, and for everyone's sake, keep the damned women out. Now, remember, this is the 1970s. Yeah? When Yale's board was considering the same difficult and controversial decision, remember, it was controversial to decide whether or not to admit women, one Yale alumnus commented to the board, "Gentlemen, let's face it, charming as women are, they get to be a drag if you're forced to associate with them each and every day." This same alumnus worried that male undergraduates at Yale who were focused on their studies would find themselves buried in the, quote, idiotic trivia all women try to impose on men. One Princeton University alum complained, "What is all this nonsense about admitting women to Princeton? A good old-fashioned whorehouse would be considerably more efficient and much, much cheaper." So, since most Ivy League schools refused to admit women, they established sister schools as a compromise. The 7 sister schools were supposed to be the female counterparts to the male Ivy League schools. So that was Columbia had Barnard, Princeton, Bryn Mawr, Dartmouth, Mount Holyoke, Yale, Vassar, and then Harvard, Wellesley, and Radcliffe. Now, before they were forced to establish Radcliffe, Harvard created the Harvard Annex to educate women separately from its male undergraduates. But after serious pressure from women's groups, Harvard was encouraged to expand the annex. So, in 1890, Harvard created Radcliffe College as its sister institution. Radcliffe educated women by contracting with Harvard professors to provide the instruction. It offered its own diplomas, but the diplomas had to be countersigned by Harvard's president. Now keep in mind that single-sex education was rooted in the belief that women really didn't need a college degree to pursue the roles that society assigned to them. And at that time, those roles were essentially homemaker, mother, and domestic servant. So many of the female academies and seminaries were designed to simply further domestic skills, social polish, and I love this one, parlor savvy. I want a course in parlor savvy one day. Not only did many people believe that it was unnecessary to educate women because their place was in the home, a lot of people truly believed that rigorous study was unhealthy for women. Even women's colleges often treated higher education for women as a dangerous experiment. Colleges for men modeled their campuses on the academic villages plan, in which men slept in dorms and crossed the quad to attend classes and take meals in various buildings. In contrast, many women's colleges restricted their students' freedom by modeling their campuses not on villages but on seminaries. Female students typically lived and studied in one building or buildings that were contiguous. That was a deliberate architectural choice intended to protect women from losing their virtue. Now, well before the creation of the Seven Sisters colleges, there were women's colleges like Wesleyan College in Macon, Georgia, which was chartered as the Georgia Female College on December 23rd, 1836, making it the first all-women college in the world. Now remember, we were chartered as a seminary in 1847. We did not become a college until 1892. In fact, our 19th century academic evolution mirrored very closely the timeline of Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, founded by Mary Lyon in Massachusetts in 1837. Mount Holyoke didn't receive its collegiate charter until 1888. And Mary Lyon, by the way, was a role model and an inspiration to Anna Peck Sill, who is the founder of Rockford Female Seminary. And there were some early co-ed colleges like Oberlin in Ohio. Oberlin has a fascinating institutional history you should read sometime. In 1837, Oberlin opened its doors to all students, including women and people of color. Then, in 1862, Oberlin awarded a degree to Mary Jane Patterson. Mary Jane Patterson, making her the first black woman to earn a bachelor's degree. This was radical stuff, 1837. But even those forward-thinking co-ed schools didn't always treat male and female students equally. The year Oberlin first began admitting women, female students were dismissed from classes on Mondays. To do what? Anybody? To do the laundry of the male students. Who guessed that, by the way?
I'm not that old.
Neither am I. So the long exclusion of women from higher education began to gradually shift in the 19th century. Of the 6,000 plus seminaries and academies in existence in 1850, a sizable percentage were educating women either exclusively or together with men. 50 women's colleges opened their doors in the United States between 1836 and 1875. And to give credit where credit is due, many of those early women's colleges, like the Wesleyans, like the Oberlins, they were created largely in the belief that women were capable of and deserving of higher learning. However, the more intellectually rigorous, privileged Ivy League schools, who begrudgingly opened their doors to women very late in the game, their interest in going co-ed wasn't that noble. In fact, it was financial. This is, again, always so hard for me to wrap my head around because, we're not talking about the 1870s, we're talking about the 1970s, right? Admitting women in what was about doing the right thing earlier in the history with these small colleges that were the Oberlins and the Wesleyans. But university administrators from the elites, they succumbed to pressure because they wanted to stay competitive. In 1967, Yale's president, Kingman Brewster, said, "Our concern is not so much what Yale can do for women, but what women can do for Yale." That remark characterized women not only as a commodity, but as a perk for male students, not scholars who could genuinely benefit from an Ivy League education. We think about how far the Ivy League schools have come since the fight over whether or not to admit women, but as late as 1979, when a female undergraduate at Yale asked if the history department might offer a course on women's history, the chair of the department said, "That would be like teaching the history of dogs." It just wasn't that long ago, folks. Women have been fighting for equal access to higher education for centuries. By the 20th century, co-ed schools had finally become the norm rather than the exception. In 1880, 46% of four-year colleges and universities enrolled men and women, a number that jumped to 58% by 1900 and to 64% by 1934, when 7 in 10 undergraduates attended a co-ed institution. Now, Stanford opened its doors in 1891, and it opened as a co-ed institution. So did the University of Chicago, by the way. Also, the entire University of California system, established in 1869, was established as a co-ed from the start. So in the 1960s, when many Ivy League institutions still refused to admit women, 281 women's colleges granted undergraduate and graduate degrees across the United States. That number dropped to 107 by 1986, as most schools had made the transition to admitting women. During the past decade, U.S. women's college numbers have declined, and today, only 26 active women's colleges remain in the U.S. In 1940, fewer than 4% of American women had a college degree. By academic year 2016-17, women earned 57% of bachelor's degrees awarded in the country. And in 2019, women made up a majority of the U.S. college-educated workforce for the first time in history. So although women have come a long way since we were largely excluded from higher ed, women's success in higher education doesn't always transfer outside of school. For example, on average in 2021, American men with a bachelor's degree earned $84,826, while American women with a bachelor's degree earned $65,987. Now, about half of that wage gap comes from occupational choices, no question about it. Careers dominated by men typically pay more than those that employ more women. Gender influences these choices, of course, with persistent stereotypes often discouraging women from STEM fields. Now, within the academy, things are finally beginning to change as well. Women now make up 49.8% of full-time faculty in the U.S., but only 35.2% are classified as tenured or tenure track. So, February 25th, 1847, the day the charter was granted to create what our founder, Anna Peck Sill, described as, quote, a collegiate institute for young women with the design of affording opportunity for as thorough intellectual and Christian culture as is provided for young men in our best colleges. A little more than 2 years after the charter was issued, under the guidance of Principal Anna Peck Sill, the Rockford Female Seminary held its first class. In the 176 years since its founding, this institution has held strong through multiple wars, including 2 world wars, through the stock market crash of 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression. It has seen the passing of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote, and landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Rockford College witnessed the internet's explosion in the late 90s and the dot-com bubble. Remember Y2K? That was another thing that had us all terrified. It has witnessed the election of an African-American president, and a little more than 2 years ago, it witnessed a challenge to the free and fair election of another American president, calling into question the very foundation of American democracy. And through it all, the myriad social, political, technological, and economic changes this women's seminary has endured for over 176 years, Rockford University continues to advance its fundamental mission. We were founded by women who recognized the many barriers they faced and basically said, oh well, And they went ahead and forged to create a learning institution with an express purpose to transform the world. And for all the progress we have made, I see no evidence that our purpose has changed one bit in over 165 years. It is a privilege to be a part of this very special learning community. Thank you. Join Professor Tim Adams as he leads us in the singing The Decus. The lyrics can be found on the back of your program and on the screen behind you.
Please stand with me. Our strong bond shall ne'er be broken, for that dear are you. Take me now a pledge unspoken, to thee will be true. Rockford, Decus et Veritas, deep graven on each heart, will be found unwavering true till we from life must part.
You can sing this at karaoke.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes this year's Charter Day celebration. Please join us for a reception in the lobby. And now, kindly stand for the processional and remain standing until the platform party and faculty have filed out. Thank you.